and the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has visited the scene of last night's awful attack on that Christmas market in the German city of Magdeburg. A car drove into the crowd. It was a Christmas market. It was in the evening. It's killed at least 5 people, including a child, and it's injured more than 200. I mean, the footage of it was really, really frightening. And Chancellor Scholz has condemned the brutality of the attack. He laid a white rose at the scene, and the state premier, Rainer Haseloff, also spoke to the media who were gathered there. And video footage has emerged showing the suspected driver of the car being arrested. You can hear officers shouting at the man there to lie down, stay down, don't move, they're saying. Now, there has been wild speculation as to the motive and who this person is. What we do know so far is that the man arrested is a 50-year-old doctor from Saudi Arabia who has lived in Germany since 2006. And of course, people are going through his social media at the moment, and lots of people were jumping to lots of conclusions. But the reality is we don't really know his motive yet. But let's speak with Peter Conradi, who is the Europe editor of the Sunday Times. Peter, thanks very much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
What is the latest in terms of what you've heard?
Well, we've just had a press conference by the prosecutors and various other kind of local officials. As far as the motive of the driver is concerned, they still say that they don't know for sure what motivated him, but they said it appears to be he was dissatisfied at the treatment of fellow refugees like himself from Saudi Arabia. I mean, this is the sort of the kind of the curious thing about this attack, which I think you sort of almost alluded to in your introduction, which I think when people first heard this heard the attack yesterday evening, there was a sort of the thought, gosh, this is another Islamist attack. No, it isn't. I mean, this gentleman is a very different character. He's a sort of an anti-Islamist. If one looks at his social media posts, he's someone who was born a Muslim but proclaims himself an atheist. He claims he was being persecuted by the Saudis for having turned his back on his religion, and in Germany sort of helped other people who also fled Saudi Arabia and also renounced Islam. So, I mean, he was actually described by the German Interior Minister as being an Islamophobe. Which, in a sense, he is.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because as you say, there was that kind of people jumping to that conclusion, and then lots of people then saying, actually, it doesn't look like it's as it is on the tin. I mean, obviously, there are conspiracy theories already running. People are saying, "Oh, is this a double bluff? Is he kind of is this a thing to sort of throw people off the scent?" I mean, I suppose the reality is, until he's interviewed and there's more investigation, we don't really understand why he's done this at this stage.
No, we don't. But I mean, he has certainly. Thanks largely to the very good sleuthing by German journalists. I mean, a very large amount of his rather prodigious social media output has come to light, which does actually back that theory that he is an atheist. He's very anti-Islam. He also gave interviews. I mean, he was quite a prominent member of the sort of opponents of the Saudi regime living in Germany, and he gave interviews, including even to the BBC, in which he spoke about his work, helping people essentially flee Saudi Arabia and helping them when they arrived in Germany. And I mean, the bizarre thing, of course, is that he was working as a psychiatrist and working with prisoners at a correctional facility about 30 miles or so south of Magdeburg. And these prisoners apparently had, drug addiction issues. He himself, and when police did a sort of blood analysis after he was arrested, they found traces of drugs also in his bloodstream. So, this is not the typical profile of a young Islamist killer at all.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to find out more about what's motivated this. Final question to you, Peter. What do you think the sort of broader fallout will be from this attack?
Well, I think we should bear in mind that this is happening at the beginning of a rather acrimonious election campaign in Germany. We've got snap elections in 2 months from now after the collapse of Chancellor Olaf Scholz's government. The election is likely to be won by the center-right Christian Democrats, but the far-right Alternative for Germany coming in second place, getting almost 20% of the vote. They're also particularly strong in this part of Eastern Germany. And so, I think it's probably going to play into their hands, because whether he's an Islamist or not an Islamist, he was born in Saudi Arabia. He fits the profile of people who they are against. And so I think they will be making hay with this.
Even though there are, as you say, social media tweets where he's actually looking like he's kind of quite supportive of AfD. Yeah, it's very strange. It's very well. Look, Peter, thanks very much for your time. Good to catch up with you. That's Peter Conradi. Well, we've got some. You can see on the TV screens that the market is still cordoned off with red and white tape, and there's a huge police presence there, of course. Well, let's now speak with Dr. Matthias Quent, who is a professor of sociology at the Magdeburg Stendal University. Matthias, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Good evening.
What is the mood like in Magdeburg today?
Of course, the city is shocked. On the one hand, there is fear. Nobody knows what will happen in the next days, because there will be rallies of extremists, far-right extremists who want to show up in the evening. There is, of course, the shock, because everyone knows anyone who was injured or even murdered in the last night, and so we see a lot of solidarity, people laying down flowers and so on. But as was mentioned in the speech before, we live in very political times, and this questions of polarization is something that is I mean, it's shaping the mood in the city. When Chancellor Scholz came to Magdeburg today and other members of the government, there were shoutings against them from a small group of people in the streets, and it's not an easy situation when it comes to the political dimension of this terrible attack. And of course, what's going out of the focus in this with these problems is what happened to the more than 200 injured and 5 killed people, and what is the situation of the people who are now in fear of their beloved ones.
Of course, I mean the town must be in such profound shock and grief for all the people who were murdered and the people who are very seriously injured. And of course, this will send a chill across the rest of the country, where, we've heard that a number of Christmas markets have been told not to go ahead, and there will be that deep sense of fear and unease. In terms of what happens next, Matthias, because there are big elections coming up. The German Interior Minister has already described the suspect as Islamophobic, despite him being from Saudi Arabia. I mean, it is interesting, this case, because he is from Saudi Arabia. Some of my listeners are messaging in saying he is an Islamist, but when German journalists have looked through his social media, he seems almost to be more supportive of the far right and very against Islam.
Yes, that could be said for sure, at least if the things that we found in social media are real, and there at the moment there's no aspect to see that the videos and things that he published are not really from his. He seems to be very anti-Islam. He showed solidarity with Tommy Robinson. He showed solidarity with the far right. AfD. He has links to far-right global digital networks. And to be honest, it would not be the first time such a thing happens in Germany. In 2016, there was a terror attack in Munich where 9 immigrant people were killed by a far-right extremist who himself has a migration background. So he came from, his parents were Iranians, and he murdered for racist, for far-right attitudes or motives as well. But this is a very complicated situation, and that's why it's so easy to instrumentalize this case for political aims.
Yes, and it's going to be very important to wait and see what the police find out when they speak to him and do more investigating. But as you say, it's a very horrific day, and our thoughts and prayers are with everybody in Magdeburg. Matthias, thanks very much for your time. That's Dr. Matthias Quent.